Hello, I'm Jimmy Carr and welcome to my Comedy Cuts, and this show is all about my favourite subject, jokes. Over the next half an hour, I'm going to be playing you some of my favourite clips of some of the world's funniest stand-ups. And while I do that, we'll talk a little bit about some theories of how jokes actually work. Of course, no one knows for sure the secret of comedy. That's what makes it exciting, unpredictable, and, well, a little bit magical. But that hasn't stopped some of the world's biggest brains from having a crack at comedy. I'm talking about brain boxes like sex-mad psychiatrist Sigmund Freud. Freud developed what he called the release theory of comedy. It describes how jokes work like a pressure valve. Apparently, we're all filled up with socially taboo thoughts and feelings, which build up an enormous amount of pressure that we eventually ejaculate through laughter. Yes, I said ejaculate, because everything that Freud says basically comes down to one thing: sex. Freud could find sex anywhere, even in the comedy of someone as silly and nonsensical as Tommy Cooper. Now I've got an image of Tommy Cooper and sex in my head. That's not good.
Last week I went to a travel agency about my holidays, and there was a big poster of Mallorca. So I want to go there, so he pinned me to the wall. And I went by jumbo jet. The pilot was an elephant. And I always sit in the tail end of a plane, always. Because you never hear of a plane backing into a mountain. And when I got to the hotel in Mallorca, they gave me the red carpet treatment. They did. I thought it was very nice of them. And they said, the beds are not ready, so you've got to sleep on the red carpet. And I got to the room, and there was no ceiling to the room. So I rang out to the manager. I said, there's no ceiling to my room. He said, that's all right. He said, the man up baby doesn't walk about much. And when I got back from the holiday, I parked the car in the drive, took the luggage out the back seat, and helped my wife down from the roof rack. And there was 2,000 milk bowls on the doorstep. And I said to the milkman, I've been away on a holiday. He said, thank goodness for that, he said. I was beginning to think you didn't like the stuff. And there was water everywhere. Because my wife, she always leaves us taps running when we go away. Because she's got a theory that it drowns burglars. And the cellar was about 7 foot high of water. 7 foot. I was so surprised, I nearly fell off her shoulders. And it started to rise the first floor, second floor, and third floor, which I couldn't understand. We live in a bungalow.
According to Freud, all comedy is a subversive act, which means I have something else in common with Che Guevara, not just my chiselled good looks. This might sound daft, but it actually does make a bit of sense if you think about how comedy works against the constraints of acceptable adult social behaviour. That might seem a little bit sociology O-level, but what it means is it's sometimes nice to go to a comedy club and have a good old laugh at stuff you might normally avoid talking about. Like your crappy relationship, your crappy sex life, and your crappy attempts to convince the world that you are in fact a real man, not just some boy trapped in a man's body who's terrified by anything in the world that isn't him, and especially women. Well, I, for one, feel better already. But just to show you that I'm not really scared of women, here's one right now. It's called Kerry Godliman. Someone tell me when it's gone, I'll be hiding in the bathroom.
And it's so boring being pregnant because you can't drink. That's the crap bit. I used to go to pregnancy yoga. That wasn't particularly fun, but the woman that ran the group was extraordinarily patronising, and so she'd welcome us in. We'd all waddle in and sit in a big circle on bean bags. And she'd welcome us in and she'd say, hello, ladies. Mummies to be. We're going to go around the group. We're going to ask everybody their name, how many weeks pregnant they are, and how they feel. Okay? So by the time it came round to me, I was like, hello, my name's Kerry. I'm 28 weeks pregnant. How do I feel? I've got a terrible hangover. That was quite funny. Watching all these women go, can you drink now? Can you drink? Have they changed the rules on all of that?
I know a retired gynaecologist. Incredibly friendly man, always looking up his old clients. Freud had a lifelong fascination with jokes. While working on the interpretation of dreams, he was struck by the similarities between the world of jokes and the dream world, at least in terms of their cheerful embrace of the illogical. After thinking about it for half a minute, Freud decided that dreams are spontaneous, nocturnal emissions of the psyche, and jokes must serve a similar function in the daytime. You can probably tell that I'm not completely won over by Freud's arguments, but talking about it does give us an excuse to analyse some jokes, or as Freud would probably put it, analyse them. Dirty Sigmund. The problem with following Freud's approach is that he sees a sexual connotation in absolutely everything. God knows what he would have made of this clip of Alan Cochrane.
I love eating. I'm a noisy eater as well. When I say I'm a noisy eater, I don't mean nom 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 nom. I hate that. My mate Dan does that on every food he puts in his mouth. Everything makes a noise. I can kind of forgive you if you're eating a noisy food like crisps or like a really crunchy apple or, you know, maybe a biscuit that's quite crunchy. But my mate Dan makes a noise eating yoghurt. Now, surely yoghurt is a silent food, isn't it? There's no crunch to a yoghurt. This is how much noise you should make eating a yoghurt. Maybe. You know, if it's an especially nice yoghurt, I'll forgive you. If you've treated yourself to a Muller fruit corner, you know, maybe you've bought 3 for £1.09. I don't know where you shop, but if it's your first of the 3 before you get the sick feeling, you know, then you're definitely allowed an That's the kind of noise I make when I eat. I get lost in the food and I go, which I think I would spell with 4 M's. But sometimes your expectations are really, really low, and then the food's hot and tasty, and you give them the double H, triple M, which is quite hard to do unprovoked, but I'll try and recreate it for your entertainment. So it's very, very low expectations, food good and hot, and you give them the and that's a noise I think you hear every now and again and in a Wetherspoons pub in the UK, isn't it? Let's not lie, they're not known for their fine cuisine, are they? They're basically a pub that's a place for a cheap pint and a poo if McDonald's have locked the toilets again, aren't they? I do enjoy my food. I sometimes just get caught up thinking all day about how good it must have been to be the first person on earth to put cheese and tomato together. Because they must have existed separately before somebody put them together and presumably then moved to Italy. But that must have been a great day, going, lads, you will not believe what I have done. I have got a taste sensation coming your way.
Freud ascribed an almost mystical quality to jokes. Like dreams, he said they come from beneath our conscious mind and reveal our hidden neurosis, which in my opinion works okay when you're joking about gender, race or sexuality, but it's likely reading too much into the humble knock-knock joke. To be fair, Freud did accept that some silly jokes were just that, silly, nonsense and harmless. It's almost like he was deciding what the rules were as he went along, changing them and shaping them to fit his game plan. I guess in a way, Freud was like the scientific equivalent of Simon Cowell. Here are 2 British comedians that certainly broke more than their fair share of taboos. It's Peter Cook and Dudley Moore.
The thing what makes you know that Vernon Ward is a good painter, if you look at his ducks, have you ever looked at his ducks?
Yeah.
If you look at his ducks, you see the eyes follow you around the room. Do you notice that?
Yeah.
If you see 16 of his ducks, you see 32 little eyes following you around the room.
No, you only see 16 because they're flying sideways and you can't see the other eye on the other side.
No, but you get the impression, Dad, that the other eye is craning round the beak to look at you, don't you? That's a sign of a good painting, Dad. If the eyes follow you around the room, it's a good painting. If they don't, it isn't.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Pete, because I was in the bathroom the other day.
Of course you were, Dad, I remember that.
Of course I was, Pete. And I had the feeling of somebody in the room with me, you know.
Yeah.
I thought, funny, you know. Bathroom door locked, you know, funny.
Somebody in the room with me.
Funny, you know.
Yeah.
Didn't see no one coming. I thought,
funny.
You know, felt these eyes burning in the back of my head. Funny, you know. So, I whip round like a flash. I see the bloody laughing cavalier up there, having a giggle. I said, yeah, I felt so embarrassed,
Of course
you know.
you would, yeah.
So I went out the bathroom and I went across to Mrs. Connolly's across the road and asked if I could use her toilet.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you feel a bit daft with somebody looking at the back of you.
Yeah.
She's all right, though, because she's only got a bowl of pansies in her toilet.
I'll tell you what's even worse, Dad, than the laughing cavalier.
What's that,
Can
Pete?
you think of anything worse?
No,
There is
Pete.
something worse than the laughing cavalier, was my Auntie Muriel has. She has the bloody Mona Lisa in her toilet, yes. That's dreadful. That awful sniffy look about her, looking so superior, you know, peering down at you. She looks as if she'd never been to the lab in her life, you know.
I mean, that's the thing about the Laughing Cavalier. At least he has a giggle, doesn't he?
I went to an art gallery the other day. It just looked like a pile of old bricks. They were building an extension. Yeah, fair enough. For a people not known for their contribution to the world of comedy, the Germans certainly like to analyse it. Another theory about how jokes work came from the philosopher Immanuel Kant, who back in the 1790s probably had no idea just how funny his name would sound on radio 200 years later. His was the incongruity theory of comedy, and it basically says that laughter is an affectation arising from the sudden transformation of strained expectation into nothing. That might not seem that funny now, but it absolutely killed in the beer kellers of 18th century Prussia. Let's get back to the clips. Here's the ever-charming Ardal O'Hanlon.
I have a bad back, that's why I can't move very far. You know, everyone seems to have a bad back. You know, I'm always getting in arguments with people over who's got the worst back. Like, and my father, when I was growing up, he was always telling me to look after me back. You know, as he used to say in his own words, "You're no good without a back." He's a genius, my father. Absolute genius. Oh, you're right, Daddy. I'd be no good. In fact, I'd probably be a puddle. You're right. And I've had every back complaint there is. You know, I've had slip discs and lumbago and tosser's twinge and weeping hunch and monkey tail. I've had them all. Finally, I went to a surgeon. He operated on me, and all he did was he took out my spine and he washed it. A dirty spine. That was the problem.
My girlfriend has a bad back. I was relaxing on the sofa the other day when she came in complaining about it again. I said, "What are you doing trying to carry all that heavy shopping like that? Make 2 trips." Kant's incongruity theory might sound complicated, but it isn't. It basically says that a setup of a joke makes you think in one way, and then the punchline reveals that you should have been thinking in another way. It's like the punchline pulls the rug away from under your mind's legs when it was least expecting it, and when your mind hits the floor, it responds with laughter. Oh, great. I've complicated it up again. Well done me. Here's Miles Jupp.
I seem to attract an unusually high level of street aggression. A youth jumped out at me in the street the other day, jumped out and shouted, "Who's the daddy?" Now, what sort of behaviour is that, quite frankly? Jumping around in a tracksuit shouting abstract questions to complete strangers. What does he mean, who's the daddy? Perhaps it was a question that was regularly asked of his mother when she first became pregnant. Well, I doubt very much he was able to answer with any degree of certainty. Who's the daddy? The daddy's the man that sits at the head of the dinner table. That's who the daddy is. I just feel very sorry for the youth of today. They're being let down, aren't they? These people who go around walking around the provinces and whatever. You see these sort of track-suited morons kicking their offspring down the high streets. It's depressing to see. It's not nice to see, is it? All this very bizarre, isn't it? The peculiar models. They all seem to be very close together in age, don't they? You can only tell which is the oldest mother because she's the one with the most tattoos. You know what I mean?
Who's the daddy? Isn't that Jeremy Kyle's catchphrase? The easiest way to explain Kant's theory is with an example. Luckily, I've got one handy. How do you make a dog drink? Put it in a blender. You see, at first, you thought I was talking about a dog drinking, but actually, it turns out I was talking about a drink made from a dog. Jokes like this rely on 2 things. Firstly, the glorious ambiguity of the English language, which has loads of words that sound the same but mean different things. Secondly, that when faced with ambiguity like this, our brains automatically go to the option that seems most likely. A drinking dog is much more likely than a drink made from a dog, unless you're having lunch with a North Korean dictator, in which case it's probably best just to say, "Thanks very much, this is delicious." Here's a great example from American stand-up ARJ Barker.
Clothes, I think you should dress how you want. I just hate funny T-shirts, because they're never funny. They're just stupid. Like this one I saw, it said, "I'm not gay."